This episode of the MSP podcast is brought to you by Big Tex Outdoors. Everything you could possibly need for your firearm. If he doesn't have it, you probably don't need it. And brought to you by Tier 1 Concealment and the Modern Samurai Project Pro Series holster. Still can't do a sub-second draw? We'll get a Tier 1 Concealment holster. Still can't? Well, at least now you know it's not the holster's fault. And primary and secondary, the definitive source for the armed professional and the responsible citizen. Quit your bitching about all the rules and get better. Hey guys, welcome to the Modern Samurai Project podcast, better known as the Get Better podcast, as the Self-Reliant podcast, or whatever nickname you people out there are giving it these days, right? I'm your host, Scott Jablinski. Today, we're doing our first kind of wide panel one. And what we're going to talk about are different names for it, right? For example, flat range skills, hard skills, those things that are the prerequisite to tactics. And the interesting kind of conundrum you have out there in internet land where people think one doesn't beget the other and you don't need to work one on to have the other and things of that nature. So as everybody knows, I super suck with introductions. So I'm going to let the guests go ahead and do that. Guys, say who you are, what you do, what you did, whatever you want to say, and we'll get to the rest of the content, right? So AJ, since right now you're the biggest dude on my screen, we're going to start with you.
Hurtful, but okay. I'm AJ Zito. I run a company called Practical Performance. Former military, former executive protection PSD guy. Now I'm a full-time gunsmith as well as instructor. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, cool. Masterclass shooter in all the sports?
All the sports.
All the sports. Awesome. Thank you, brother. All right, Mr. Little.
All right, my name is Matt Little. I have a company called Graybeard Actual Training Company. Special Forces vet, retired Chicago Police SWAT, and USPSA competitor on the weekends.
Cool. What's the name of your company again?
Graybeard Actual.
Cool. Awesome. Mr. Pranka.
Yep. I'm Matt Pranka, and I am the owner of X-Ray Alpha.
Cool. The internet already knows who you are by now, so that's cool. Jim?
I feel like after Matt's intro, I should just say my first name and stop.
Exactly.
Jim Dexter. I'm a patrol sergeant out in the suburbs of Chicago and an assistant commander of a multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, and I operate tactically sound training center.
Nice. And actor.
And actor.
Part-time. Go Walther. And Mr. Pannone.
Mike Pannone. I was a Marine and then an Army guy, and I have my own business. Been around a little bit, so that's who I am.
Okay, cool. Also, I said it for AJ, but Mike, you're master class in 3 divisions, right? In USPSA. Yeah. Pranka, you're a grandmaster in production, and Matt, you're master class in USPSA in a couple of divisions.
2 divisions, yeah.
2 divisions, right? So production and carry optics.
No, production and PCC.
Okay, so 1 division. And moving on. Sorry.
PCC is not a crime.
Is everybody okay? Is everybody okay?
Is everybody all right? Does anybody get muzzled by the PCC guy yet? Okay, no. All right, cool, awesome. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and first, I think we need to establish everyone's definition of the theme of this, right? I know we talked a little bit about this before we got online, right? So Pranka calls them hard skills. I think Mike calls them component skills and things of that nature, right? The reason why I brought this up is that people, you have the performance side of things and getting to a level of that competency, right? And then you have the application of those things, whether you're a civilian for self-defense, whether you're LE doing your job, whether you are MIL doing your job in that respect. But so many people, I think, want to skip over those hard component skills and go straight to the tactics, right? Why is that okay? Or why is that not okay? So we're going to go right to left this time. Mike, what are your thoughts on that, man?
I mean, you can kind of pontificate about it, about why it's
sure,
why it's not. But I think using an analogy is really important. Like when I first started riding motorcycles hard when I was young, okay, learning how to break the back end loose and slide the back end is really important if you want to go fast. Okay. But it's really important before you decide to go fast. Otherwise, you go faster than you can and you throw a bike away and hurt yourself or somebody else. It's like it is a skill that you require prior to racing, so to speak. And when you look at component skills or hard skills, I think it's just the same thing, just different verbiage. But if you can't do that, if you can't break the back end loose and control the bike, you have no right getting on the track. Okay. And so it's like everything we do, if you're going to race a car, you got to learn how to drive a car. Then you have to understand how to run it, how to manage it, the vehicle itself. And then down the road, if you perfect all of that, the ability to turn, the ability to brake, threshold brake, all that, then you can go fast. I think the way I see it is too many people just want to get in a race car and drive. It's like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to be able to do before you ever get on the track. And as I view it, CQB is getting on the track. And everything's going really, really fast and a compressed time schedule, okay, with reactionary gaps that are minimal. And you think that you're going to be able to perform if you can't perform on a square range? It's ludicrous to me. It's completely ludicrous.
Yeah, that's actually a great example, right? If you can't go fast by yourself, how are you going to go fast against opponents? Yeah. All right, cool.
Or just with people around you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. AJ, what do you think, man?
Yeah. So kind of along those lines, right? I think a lot of guys, listen, hard skills are hard. They're hard to acquire. They take time to acquire. It doesn't happen today, right? But you can, at least, in my experience, guys can latch on to the tactics part of it much quicker than they can develop hard skills. So it's faster. It seems easier. So why not focus on that? Which is really not the right answer. I totally agree with Mike, right? If you can't do the hard stuff, the hard skills, you're not ready to do the tactics portion or to do the component tasks yet. So yeah.
Jimbo?
Yeah, and in policing, I think there's this hurry to get to the finish line, right? To be that 1 foot from breaking through the tape and saying that I'm done and that I'm at the end. But there's the lack of realization that there's like the journey to get to the finish line. And if you're trying to get to the finish line, but you don't know how to manage the middle of the race, right? And you haven't trained for that sticking point, right? You marathon runners, like I could never run a marathon because I don't possess the psychological ability to push through it at mile 4, right? because I don't want to, right? It's the same thing when we look at shooting and tactics and things like that. Everybody wants to visualize that end component, but they don't know how to manage mile 4 in the shoot house, or mile 6 within managing that critical incident that isn't that end with a room entry and a shoot. Managing that 4-way hallway, managing that blind corner, managing the team tactics, the command and control portion, of it. So everybody just wants to get to that end sexy part, and they don't realize all of the things that are involved with getting to that point, including just base marksmanship skills on the flat range and knowing how to clear a malfunction. All of a sudden you're in that hallway and you engage and you have a malfunction. You don't know what to do with it. Well, guess what? You're not getting to the finish line.
Right. Yeah. So here's an interesting question for Jim, because everybody here on the podcast, except for you, has at least a classification of masterclass shooter, is either competing or had competed for a very long time, except for you, right? And that being said, you're fast as fuck, boy, right? Sub-second draws for you are pretty much these days on demand. Transitions, splits, all that stuff are within a masterclass level of performance. And it's probably because of the dudes you hang out with. But since you don't compete, why is that important for someone like you? What was the decision that you particularly made as someone that's not going to get the payoff or the glory from competition to get to that level of skill?
I get the highest chance of survival every single day I go to work.
Okay, but so why is it?
I think that's a serious conversation that people don't have with themselves, and the realization that they need to possess the highest level of skill set possible, and understanding that luck is part of engagements, but I need to have a skill set to do everything possible to prevent that other person from getting lucky. I have to be better than the other person. Yeah. There's no, I don't have a percentage ranking, but I need to be better than 100% of the people on the streets. Do I know that? No, I don't know that until that day comes, until I am tested, until the end of that happens. But, you know, just the individual conversation of why you're going for these skill sets and why you're trying to encompass everything that it takes to make it to the finish line, you know, in that race is something that I think that people don't have a true and honest conversation with themselves about that and what it takes to get there. People make excuses like, you know, a sub-second draw and stuff. That's for the gram. Okay, bro. Right? Until it's that day.
Yeah.
Right? And the dude who's going for the gun in the console has a 9.5 from the console, and you were worried about it being for the gram, and you got a 1.5. Guess what, bro?
Yeah.
The problem's not related to the gram anymore. Your opportunity for glory and winning that engagement and going home, you never built any foundation for that.
Yep. There you go.
So was there, Mike, was there a instance that kind of drove you to this way of thinking?
What's that?
Like something that happened to you? That,
So you said Mike, did you mean Jim?
oh, Jim, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay.
No,
I need to put little stickies on my computer.
Right. Yeah.
The guy that was just talking, that's who I'm talking to.
Yeah, there was. It was, I had a change in my circle of influence of people. You know, I'd surrounded myself with a group of people who were good dudes. Right? But I found myself at the higher end and level of the skill set within that group, right? And part of the reason why I got there was because of them. And then I stepped into a newer, smaller, kind of tighter group of dudes who were really about it. They were about that life. They were about making dudes better and challenging each other to be better all the time, and changed the presentation of the job and what was necessary to do it, right? It changed from like, hell yeah, brother, like you won that fight because you walked away, to, hey, was this a win? Yeah, they walked away, but let's look at the whole story of this and what could have been done better so that we can teach people to be better and be better ourselves. So I 100% think that it was a matter of stepping into a more serious group of dudes who would hold each other accountable and hold other people accountable with the goal to make other people better, right? There's no ego within this group. I think that's the other thing about it, was that there's no ego. When we talk, it's not about ego. It is truly about keeping each other, you know, responsible for what we say and what we do every single day, and not for us, but for other people and for each other.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Pranka, what about yourself?
What was the question again?
Yeah, I kind of forgot too. I was hoping that you would remember, right? So yeah, hard skills. Yeah. So when was that decision? Like, so define it. When was that decision that the two can be separated and one is primary over the other, or whatever you think?
I mean, I think as soon as you get serious about whatever tactical job you have, you know, where there was definitely a time for me in the military where there was like war and shit was kind of like a fantasy. We all dressed up and played it. And then September 11th happened, and then it became kind of a real thing, and started dispelling like, okay, this isn't maybe how we were doing business in, you know, August of 2001 isn't what we needed, you know, come 2002 or 2003. So being able to recognize, and I think a lot of it comes down to like who you're surrounded with, you know, the groups you're at. If you're in an echo chamber full of bad ideas, you're probably gonna have those bad ideas imprint on you. Or if it's an echo chamber where everyone, you know, you've all seen them, a bunch of men just sit around and brush each other's fucking hair about how great you are and everything. That's one way to do business. I was fortunate enough to be in some organizations that were really, you know, kind of top guys that were interested in getting better for the sake of getting better, you know, for the sake of staying alive. And that's what kind of showed like, hey, the, you know, tactics, you don't ever get tied to, right? It's a collection of different techniques and procedures that you do to solve different problems, you know, and those problems can be vast. everybody kind of applies it to like a CQB metric or vehicle type metric because of the law enforcement background. But really, when you think about it from like the National Mission Force side, the problems that you're solving with tactics and applying hard skills to those tactics, your left and right limit of what becomes hard skills, it goes way outside of just shooting.
Okay, cool. All right. Little.
So I think one of the issues too is that people really underestimate how much their skill is going to degrade when they try to apply it.
Yeah.
How much their performance is going to be lessened under stress when there's a whole lot of other things going on, a lot of other variables being taken into account, right? So guys are able to convince themselves that they're good enough. And really, is there even really a good enough when you think about it? I mean, there's no upper limit as far as I'm concerned. And I think that if you have one of these jobs, that's how you should look at it, because you're never going to be as good when the day comes as you are on Instagram. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to talk about is where each one of you made the decision. And there was a switch? We already talked to Jim about it a little bit. So we'll start off with you, Matt. What was your switch? Because you weren't always like that. I mean, I think when you started competing, right, you had already been, downrange a whole bunch of times, right? You were police in Chirac for many, many, many years. But there was a performance switch that happened that we talked about before, right? What was that switch, and why do you think you made that switch?
It was exposure. I was always comfortably basically the best on the range in my peer group. And then I got exposed to a couple of guys. I got exposed to Frank Proctor, who was a GM. I got exposed to Pete Milionis, who was a GM. And that kind of showed me how good actually was. And I wanted to be that good. Before that, I mean, I'd seen videos, right? Because I wanted to train the most efficient way I could. So I'd seen all the old Lenny McGill VHS videotapes, and I knew how good the USPSA champions were. But what I didn't realize was that it wasn't just a handful of guys. There were a lot of guys out there that were that good. And I figured if they could do it, I could do it too. And for my job, I should be able to do it. And that was kind of it.
Now, you had said something to me before about when you really started getting into competition that it helped your tactical skills, right? I think you specifically mentioned CQB. How did that happen?
It was a couple of different things. Part of it was looking at it like an athlete. When you start trying to get better at running stages, you're looking at your movement like an athlete does. Where can I be more efficient at everything? And most guys don't really do that. You will take CQB as the example, because it was CQB I was talking about. I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
Most guys don't look at the threshold or the corner the way an athlete would. They think they're hitting their corner, but they're really not hitting it as efficiently as they could be. So it changed the way I looked at my movement. And that was a big part of it. The other part of it, honestly, is I think I got acclimated to processing at a faster pace. And then when you slow that pace down for a team-based environment, it makes it easier to process things.
Okay, cool. Matt, would you agree with that? Or what was your switch in the whole thing? Pranka. You got your mute on, bro.
Just in case I say bad words when someone else is talking.
You're like, I'm on a show.
I think for me, I didn't really tie getting into practical shooting into tactical stuff initially. I was shooting, I was training exclusively practical shooting and training CQB, every day, 10 sessions a week. So I got exposed to it by being able to shoot with some competitive shooter guys, and then went to a match, and was like, oh shit, this is pretty fun. So for me, it was like a skill development thing.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, I went to a match. I thought I was a pretty good shooter and didn't, just dominate at the first match that I went to, and thought there was going to be something into it. And then really started diving into like, the skill standpoint, the, classification system, how they score it, and just execution of fundamentals at speed is how I kind of looked at matches. So it helped me in that. For me, it wasn't ever like, I think the processing piece, you do get a lot out of that from, probably shooting IPSC more than USPSA, just in terms of the rule set. But there is an element of looking at something and, hey, you got to perform one time, which is very similar to like, any CQB training type evolution. I know from where I came from, like we would go hit a target and it was just one time. You go hit it, and unless there was some major problem, we weren't going to go back and relive, the same target placements and all that again and again and again, because the value just went down.
Right.
So,
right.
For me, it was a skill development thing to get better. And then it came a lot of like what Jim was saying, it's setting personal goals. It's like, hey, this is where I want to be. I shot one match and I decided this is what I want to do. Read about the divisions. I'm going to shoot production and kind of set some unrealistic goals for myself initially, and then just started training to achieve those goals. And it kind of worked out, the practical style of training that we were already using exclusively for firearm stuff, just got a better understanding of it and a better understanding on how to train.
Okay, cool.
And Matt, you did that. You kind of changed your own personal goals after going on the competition end of things and doing that and seeing that a little bit and realizing you needed to change some things.
Yeah. I mean, yes. You just saw like what it's like anytime. So I was in a place where I had the opportunity to shoot with like the top guys regularly, 2 or 3 times a year, we'd bring in a competitive shooter and we'd shoot with them. So you always saw what like true performance looked like, what world-class looks like, right? Like if you've never gotten to see like an NFL team practice and you ever wonder what $12 million running up the field looks like when you're standing right there, as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, I fucking get it. Like that's like a car.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, like for dudes on like, especially on departments who are at like the top level of their department, right? Like, so it's very similar for me, right? Like I was my metric because I was at the higher end of this small group of people. And then all of a sudden I joined a different group and I'm like, oh, there's a world outside of my little world. And it's a lot better than me, right?
And I'll tell you what, that's where I think for the tactical guys, the competitive world can help them out, right? Every single person that I've ever met that is some former special operations guy always says he's a silent professional and always says that like he's humble. But we all know that that's not the case. It's just not that way. Because you're not going to say, what are you? Oh, I've got a fucking massive ego that I carry around in a backpack and I'm very hard to deal with because I'm the best at everything. But if you're not putting yourself out there and actually going and competing, right, then you're just an untested entity, right? Your TTPs or whatever in the tactical world, yeah, hey, they can be great. You guys are the best ever. Until you test it, you don't know. You just don't know. And that's a hard pill for a lot of guys to swallow, especially on the mill side in the LE world, because I hate to tell you, you're gonna fall short, and it's just the duration of time you want to fall short. It's up to you. And then it becomes a personal thing. And the one thing competitive stuff has done for me is showing me where I need to train and kind of pathways and places to go seek out information to build like actual true performance, like everybody said when we were talking about hard skills and why people get into tactics right away. And I think it's because what the law enforcement world see is that when you're done, from an organizational standpoint, when you're done with the police academy, you have all the foundational skills that are legally required for you to be a cop. But literally every single cop that I run into, it's like, well, it's not enough. It's not enough. Cool. Well, then you have to do this. You have to do this. Well, I don't know. I see more cops that spend 2 hours in a fucking gym at night and won't dry fire for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like at some point you have to let peer pressure, can only affect certain groups of people, and then allow the peer pressure to affect them. Because if you're on some sort of team, SWAT team or whatever, part-time, or even in your department, a group of guys, nobody wants to be last. And I think peer pressure is, like Jim was saying, it's a phenomenal motivator to actually get better.
Yep. Jim, you kind of already answered the question. What I want to get it back to you on, and I don't know if this, if we can bring this up. If we can, I'll just cut it out, right? But there was that one time where you needed that sub-second draw one-handed, hypothetically, unless we can talk about it.
So hypothetically, sometimes you're placed in situations where you're able to go back and look at performance and compare what your baseline on the flat range is to the real world, and see your preparations effect on the real world. Hypothetically, we had the ability to do that with some time in a lawful situation that was perfectly documented for us to take a dive into that, knowing very well what my skill set was at that point, and then interjecting the actual world into it and being able to see that difference. Yep, we hypothetically had that experience.
Yeah. So very hypothetically, right? There might have been a person that was given a command not to move because there might have been a firearm within the car. And hypothetically, that person may have kept on moving. And hypothetically, with a person with a one-handed draw, with 1 foot on the curb and 1 foot on the street, had that gun out. And when I saw it, I was like, I need to put this on. Like, remember the old Max Michel shot timer app?
Yeah.
So I put it.
Shot Max.
Yeah, the shot Max. There was no shot, but you can kind of time it through. Yeah, dude, it was like an 8-1, one-handed, uneven, right? I'm just saying, it could be important. It could be important because if you didn't have the ability to do one on the flat range, right? If all you could do is two, one is not going to come out of the sky magically when you need it. I mean, I think we can all agree with that, right? Yeah. So AJ, I'm sorry. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever gonna like build more skill whenever it happens. The thing is that I think a lot of people will say, and Matt Little, you said this, where like how your skills degrading, right? And I think if you're training correctly, your skills don't actually degrade. From a skill standpoint, what degrades is perceptions of reaction times. But if you were to, run helmet cams or body cam, and then you take all the sound out, you take the reaction off, and then you just time the initial break for the gun. So maybe it might have measured from his initial movement to the first shot, or indicator that he has to get the gun out. That might be 2 seconds. But when you start to measure just the individual skills, if you're training correctly, those skills aren't degrading. The situation is what's dictating how fast they need to be. Does that make sense?
Sure. AJ, why don't you answer the question? You want to go from perspective either from being a civilian or from your executive protection work, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll just answer all of them. So, I mean, it all comes down to the same thing, not to beat the dead horse, but, the first real USPSA competition I ever shot, I had basically realized that everything I had needed those skills for my entire life, I had gotten lucky up till that point. So there was a whole world of people with way higher skill sets than I thought existed. And they were like gynecologists and dentists and mechanics and all sorts of stuff. And so I was not about to sit there and make that okay, and really just lie to yourself and tell yourself that like, oh, I'm good enough, because that's just not how I am. So yeah, that was it.
Cool. Mike, thoughts on that?
I don't even know what the question is anymore.
Yeah, we're kind of going.
I'm like 4 questions later, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So when was the switch for you? Right? When was the switch for you? How did it relate when you made that switch? What epiphanies did you have when you made that switch on performance?
Okay. The switch is probably almost the same thing with Pranka, because we got some similar experiences. But when I got done with my training in the Army, on the Army side at JSOC, I left. I did really well in the shooting program, and I showed up to my troop, to my team, and I got my business pushed in really hard by people that shot a lot harder than me. And so, and I didn't come with any ego or anything, but I'm like, I should do okay. And I was woefully mistaken. And then we started shooting with all these professional shooters. And like Matt said, I saw what performance looked like. I did not know until that day what it looked like. And then I knew, and I was like, wow, that's what really shooting a pistol or a rifle looked like. Shooting with somebody like, rest his soul, Mike Boyd. Watching that guy shoot with a rifle was just amazing. The speed and precision, and he could talk to you while he was doing it. That type of stuff completely reformed it. And then one of the guys in my troop was like, hey, you need to shoot USPSA. That's going to be the best way for you to work on at least your pistol side. There was no PCC or any of that stuff. Now, a lot of guys were shooting back then, were shooting the soft 3-gun stuff and all that, soldier 14 match. But I started pushing the practical side, and then I got freaking blown up, lost my right eye, and I had to start all over again. I had a couple challenges I had to deal with. It is what it is. And I realized that the vehicle for me to get better was that. And I also recognized that when you look at the sport shooting side, which I think is a super healthy way to view shooting, like we talked about sub-second draws, and God is your witness. I mean, I did a bunch of them years ago on video, and I still push them, and I think it's a good metric. The problem is it becomes the holy grail. Okay, I did a sub-second draw, I'm done. Okay, so I do a sub-second draw from concealment at 7. I got it. Okay, now I back up and I did it at 10. I can do sub-second draws at 10. Now I do it with a 90-degree turn. I just keep sliding the scale. I keep making it harder, and I think that is a failure point in the whole mindset of the Instagram and all that. Okay, I think that you wind up getting tied to an end state goal. I want to do it in under a second. Okay, I did it under a second. Now I'll go on to something else. And you look at applicability and all that. So I think that's kind of a little angle that I have on the performance side. Once I realized what performance looked like, I also realized that all of those guys, no matter what they do, their best performance becomes their baseline. They go, okay, I got to beat that. They're constantly pushing. They're constantly going faster. It's a journey, not a destination kind of thing, to be a little cliche. But when I got to brag, like I said, I had always done really well wherever I was, and I showed up and I got reminded of how not awesome I was. And then I got to see what true performance looked like, and it changed the way I viewed it. And it's just been a never-ending journey. I mean, it's the first thing that I did. I mean, I'm just coming off of COVID. The first thing that I did of any consequence in my fucking living room, sweating like a hooker in church, was dry run. Like it's just part of you realize it's a discipline thing. Okay, you have to want to be better, and that goes all the way back down to what we started at the beginning with, which is those hard skills. Okay, I think the term hard skills is because they're specified. They're specific. CQB or tactics are kind of amorphous. Hard skills are specifically, can you produce a handgun and fire rapid shots effectively on multiple targets? Okay, there you go. That stuff is that's a never-ending journey. You can never be too fast. You can never be too active. And I think a lot of guys just don't want to do the work. They literally don't. And we have too many people up there doing one and done videos. And it's like, hey, man, where's the real performance? And I'll get off the freaking line here in a second. The thing to me, like, I don't care what you do in a one and done IG video. Total line with some 14-year-old girl in Utah, and watch your ass get burned down because she can shoot. It's like all that, and that's the ego. That's the part that either crushes people or drives them in the right direction. I shoot with coppers out in California all the time, and maybe they're not GMs. Maybe, but you know what? They show up. They show up and they get everything they got. And those are the guys that they're going to do well if they get freaking hit. Because we just saw in Houston, 3 cops shot, freaking squaring off against a guy with a Glock 18 backplate and a 50-round drum. Like the game is tight nowadays. So that whole thing for me, learning, I had a responsibility based on the organization I was in and what I was responsible for, to be as advertised. And if you're not seeking every bit of performance out of yourself, you're screwing your teammates, because in the end, you'll fall short and somebody else will pay for you. And I got that when I was in Recon years ago. I had a first sergeant who was he was a Force Recon, first Force guy that was cut to MAC SOC. And he said that to us. I was a young Lance Corporal. He said, you better be as advertised, because if you're not, more than likely somebody else will pay for your mistake. And I never forgot that. And so that should drive people, to drive your performance. No matter how good you are, tomorrow you better strive to be better.
Yeah. There you go. So question mainly for Mike and Matt Pranka. So you guys have similar backgrounds and stuff like that. I know they would bring people in, and probably the most notable of back in the day, like Voight, right? Barnhart, Miklick, stuff like that, right? And I'm sure that's always great, but you knew they were world champions, blah, blah, blah. And then you go to a USPSA match, right? And I know, Matt, you talk about this all the time. Well, now I go to USPSA match and I see this Dennis do it. That's got to be the like, holy shit, what is going on?
My first match, right? I looked up online where to go shoot, and it was this McKinney IPSC Society. And they had Wednesday matches every other Wednesday. So I go show up, think it's going to be like just, basically, a bowling league with guns, and I should probably be near the top or maybe even at the top, right? And I show up and there's like 5 GMs and 5 Ms, and one of the GMs is Michael Ganera and one is Les Kiss Martoni. And these guys just took my lunch money. I mean, they really did. And that was a huge wake-up call,
Yeah.
And how many times, Matt,
that's a hard
how many
match.
times do you guys see cops or soldiers show up to a match and they don't do as well as they thought they would, and you never see them again? They just leave. They're done. And they justify their failure by, oh, but my mindset, or oh, but my tactics, instead of just going ahead and owning it and getting better.
Yeah. But that's something that the tactical world has done forever, right? Let me tuck up under this tactical umbrella, and it's honestly an excuse to be really bad, right? Because nobody wants to be told you carry a gun for a living, you're a professional soldier, Navy SEAL, Special Forces, whatever. Like, nobody wants to be told, like, hey, you're just not that good. Like, in the big scheme of things, right? I don't care if you're the best fucking shooter at whatever Special Forces group, you're a fucking middle of the pack B-class shooter, probably. Or a lower third in a 3-gun match. I mean, it's what point do you want to argue this at? The hard skills are the hard skills, right? In the performance, the problem is you get these guys that get out and they have some experience, and then their 1 or 2 instances become this, they build a castle around this way of thinking. And once it's built, you're fucked.
Yeah.
You're never going to rip down any of those walls. So you get what you get, right? Not realizing that this shooting is evolving. It's evolving faster than most people can keep up with it. If you see what kind of the top guys in the concealment game are doing, if you see what the top guys in 3-gun are doing, if you see what the top pistol guys are doing, right? Now, if you're a tactical dude and you're expected to be good at all of those things, you're by the time you realize that you're behind, you've gotten farther behind, right? Yeah. And that's the problem with it. Like, when you talk about refining hard skills and actually getting better, it has to come from a place where you have to recognize that you want to get better. Or you can just sit there and be like, hey, I've got this accolade, this pedigree or whatever, and I'm just going to ride that shit forever, right? Because in reality, like, from pretty much most everybody I'm seeing on here, like, you're not going to get into gunfights. I feel pretty confident I would make that bet, and I'd bet a significant amount of money. Maybe not for Jim, because he's a cop, like, he has a higher chance, but for the most part, it becomes untested credentials, right? I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. Cool. How are you testing it? You're the world's best CQBer. When the fuck was the last time you did CQB? Not understanding the shelf life of whatever you have up here is about 6 months. And then after 6 months, we're on to the next thing. Right. And it's the same way with shooting. if you still are in this mindset that you're prepping a trigger and you know the audible reset hard front sight focus, you're so far behind what engagement sequences look like for modern day policing, modern day gunfighting, even USPSA, right? By the time you realize that, you've just gotten even more behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I can't remember. I think it was either Mike or Pranka that it said, good shooting can solve bad tactics, but good tactics can never solve bad shooting. Am I not giving the right credit here? Which one of you said that?
We had a conversation. That sounds like that's pretty eloquent. So it probably came from Mike, but but there is that holds true, right? Where like I would look at plenty of different, you know, problem sets that I would deal with where like, hey, I just need 30% of the information, right? Back in the day, back in the 90s, it was always that force recon mentality where I need eyes on, which way's the door open, all this shit. Man, I just need to know where the house is at this point. And then everything else is going to be kind of, you know, procedural driven, right? So you don't need a whole lot of information if your hard skills are like next level and you can just kind of let that shooting run in the background. Most tactical situations, one, you're going to be a lot more relaxed and probably let that situation unfold a little bit longer before you're going to getting that gun out or to like a lethal type option, because you're confident that when it gets to that point, you're going to be able to solve that problem.
Cool. Mike, your thoughts on that, since we're giving you credit for saying it?
Yeah. I don't know if I was that eloquent, but yeah, it's once you understand tactics with the hard skills being in place, once you understand tactics, it's relatively simple problem solving. It's angles and like inside of a structure. I think is what we're talking about. It's not, I mean, in my you know experience, and it's not nearly as current as Matt's, but I remember once I understood it, then I didn't even think about it. It just made sense. I just went where I was supposed to go. Like I could sense where everyone was in the room and what needed to be done, because I was only solving the problems that were varying from target to target. But the shooting part, I never thought about shooting. I never ever thought about shooting. It never crossed my mind. So it's like I think that's what Matt's saying is exactly true, man. Once you build an experiential base and a skills base that's super solid, then it flows. There doesn't have to be a bunch of talking. I remember going through an entire hospital, nobody said a word except for radio calls to hire, like, because it does need to be said. It's not, we complicate the hell out of stuff. And I see it from the outside, and I don't do any CQB instruction. I'm not even setting a foot in that lane, because it's been a long time since I did it. I understand it, I can speak to it, but I've been out of that game for a long time. That said, you know, once you understand how to truly do something, you understand the principles of it. And this was taught to me years ago in the Army side. It's just infantry tactics inside of a building. Once you understand that, then you can act accordingly. But too many people want to sexy it up and make, you know, ask all these minutiae questions. If you can shoot really good, really accurate, really fast, and you can move under control with a firearm, engaging targets in a surgical manner, then you got it. The rest of it is, like I said, it's angles and you know, and problem solving. That's relatively simple. It's not you know, nuclear physics or some shit. And I think that it looks sexy on Instagram and YouTube, and everybody gets caught up in it. And I see, you know, guys like Matt and Charlie get a lot of questions about it. And I would bet 1 in 75 people would ever even vaguely be able to use the information that they want to get from those guys. And I'm like, right. I think it's just, we're putting the cart way before the horse, and the horse is freaking skill, marksmanship skill, the ability to run your guns rapidly and effectively. If you can do that, you can make some mistakes and you can recover from them because you're so much more effective. You can have the best tactics in the world, and if you can't shoot, you're friggin' screwed, bro. Like, just is what it is. It's just luck.
Yep.
And you can see that as you take guys who aren't strong shooters and watch them try to apply CQB, because they're always thinking in their head, I have to shoot at some point, and I can't fucking shoot, right? And so, like, watching SWAT school, right? Like, and starting out and seeing some firearm skills and seeing people with a lower skill set in firearms, and Little, you've probably seen this as well, right? And then we start to work room entries and things like that. There's a difference between the guys who can shoot and the guys who can't, right? Because the guys who can shoot are like, okay, let me figure out this problem so that I can shoot. And the other guys are like, I have a problem to figure out and I have to shoot, and I can't fucking do that And so I'm thinking about that as I'm thinking about which way I need to go. And it becomes just this giant, just amalgamation of problems, right? Because there is nothing in this full sequence then that is automatic, right? Like I want to hurry up and get to the finish line, but I don't know how to work the starting block. And so everything isn't a problem because I can't solve anything at the end. And then organizationally, if your hard skill set isn't there, I don't call it hard skill set, but if your range, your shooting isn't there, then organizationally, I have a bigger issue because at the end of this, even if the room entry was fine, we didn't solve the problem, right? And so now I can't advance anything. If we're running a hostage rescue and you can't shoot, okay, congratulations, you ran this room really well, and then you hit the hostage. Cool. Guess where we have to go back to now?
But that's also something, not to get too far up. That's organizationally, that's a topic that most police organizations are okay with. Like I have yet to find a police organization that they would rather pay a 7-figure settlement than a 10-figure training bill. I think across the board, that holds true. And when you look at guys, you talked about, Jim, like guys that come in to do this like dynamic, scenario-based training and they can't shoot, but you run across guys like, hey, these dudes shoot well. I would be willing to bet, I put this out to everybody, the people in law enforcement that can shoot did not learn to shoot in law enforcement.
Fact. That's a fact.
Fair.
Yeah, that's hard truth.
Matt.
Right there.
Yeah, Matt. So
Period.
yeah. What do you got to add to that, brother? Coming from Chicago, who has probably paid out more settlements than most countries.
Chirac.
Little. Chirac, buddy. Little. Yeah. So what are your? What have you? Go ahead.
Most cops in Chicago, if they actually went to their in-service range day, shot 80 rounds a year. And most of them didn't go to their in-service range day because they could skip it. So they shot 30 rounds a year for their qual.
Yeah. And that's Chicago. That's Chicago, everybody. So AJ, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wait, on a serious note, am I the only one drinking while we're doing this? That's ridiculous.
I'm rehabbing, bro. Get off me.
Does this count?
I gotta go do a thing later tonight, semi-related to the things we're talking about.
Ah, gotcha. AJ, what do you think, brother? So I will say this, and tell me if I'm off base, man. Some of the dudes out there that are working, that it shocks me that if I had to make a bet, I would bet 95% of the time that EP guy can't shoot his way out of a wet paper bag. What's that all about?
Yeah, because they get told from day one that if you're shooting your gun, you fucked up already, which is not wrong. Totally correct. However, they've also paired that with the fact that they don't know how to shoot. The amount of times I've walked on a detail and found out that I was the only dude carrying a gun with a round in the chamber is scary to me. Yeah, that's if they were carrying guns, because apparently there's this huge problem in the EP world where everyone thinks they're a ninja. So they're going to kung fu their way out of shit, or jujitsu their way out of shit, or whatever, wushu their way out of shit.
They're going to get Detroit Dusty.
Yeah. So, it's a completely different world, but when it all boils down to it, like they make the exact same excuses as everyone else. They make the same excuses as cops, same excuses as guys in the military, same excuses everywhere, right? My tactics, bro, are going to get me through this. And that's just, it's not the case ever.
Yeah, I had so when I was teaching the joint class with Jared Rustin, he had an interesting way of saying that. It's like, look, man, these hard skills that we're talking about, that's the ticket to the show, right? Some of us don't need to go to the show, but if you're a guy that's going to the show and you are going there without the ticket, the wrong people are going to die. You know what I mean? And they said, unfortunately, it's a thing that you can have all of your tactics, you can have your CQB, you can have this, and that, man, but you can't hit anything, right? And as Mike says, you're not as advertised. I would say that everybody here, at some point in time has worried that you are not as advertised. And that's why we keep on pushing and pushing and pushing to get better for whatever mission that we are doing, whether it be civilian, mil, or LE. So question for you guys, right? So a lot of guys are out there listening to us, right? We've all made that commitment, right? We do what we do. We've gone up, we've got into a competitive environment and stuff like that. But say like you're someone like Jim, right? So Jim, you're a sergeant, right? Are you now president of the ITOA?
No, I just sit on the board of directors.
Okay, you're on the board of directors, right? You're the assistant assault commander for your regional SWAT team. You got an outstanding, you got a very energetic young daughter that, yada, yada, and a beautiful fiance, all this other shit, right? You don't have time to compete, even though you have done it before, right? We've competed together. What is your advice? And we'll get to everybody. What is your advice for someone to get into a competitive atmosphere to get better, right? And a lot of the times people don't know what better is. Right? What advice would you give those guys that simply don't have the time to commit, want to get better, and they want to get a plan?
I mean, I think it just comes down to just personally challenging yourself every single day, right? No matter what it is. First off, it's a personal commitment, to being better and doing better all the time, and then looking around you, and asking yourself, am I settling in this group of people that I'm in? Is there somebody that I can reach out to? Am I asking the correct questions when I'm in a forum of people to ask things? Like I'm looking at the dudes that I'm sitting here with right now, and I'm like, how am I sitting here, amongst these guys who I respect and who have a depth of knowledge that is light years beyond mine? I'm sitting here personally engaging Pranka like it's he and I's conversation, because I'm not going to waste that opportunity, right? Like I have to drop that sense of ego that I'm the assistant commander of operations for this SWAT team and I'm a police sergeant and all that, and publicly ask these things of how Matt and Nona and Pranka have gotten to where they are, so that I can try to get there myself, right? Just drop the fence that you have created for yourself in this status with these titles and the fact that you swore an oath and wear a badge. Nobody gives a fuck. I mean, that's kind of the big thing, is that, me with this, I'm very blunt about it. Nobody gives a fuck except yourself, right? And so drop the facade and do what you need to do to get better and to publicly get better. And I think that, one of the things for me is that I'm very open and clear about putting myself out there like that and constantly wanting to get better. And as a result of that, other people who want to get better reach out and talk to me, and I make connections just simply that way, because I show that I'm able to be, I don't know, I guess vulnerable to self-betterment, if you will. Vulnerable is not the right word. It's not vulnerability. I want to be better, right? And if you want to be better and we can make each other better, holla at your boy and let's fucking get better, bro. The end.
Yep.
But
Matt,
you got to say it out loud.
Yeah. You do. That's the thing.
You got to believe it.
Yeah. Pranka.
I think there's a lot of people though that are their level of interest peaks at questions, because ultimately there is so much information out there, right? If you truly want to get better, right? If you got to do a project on your fucking house, right? You have to do something that you're not familiar with. You'll have the answer on how to do it within 10 minutes. Right? You watch a couple YouTube videos, you'll be able to read, okay, I got to go buy this, and this is how I'm going to patch this hole, or whatever you're doing. I think for a lot of people, there's more enthusiasm in the shooting world than there is dedication. Right? And the people that are the most interesting to me are the guys that get to really high levels of skills and abilities that have absolutely no need to. Right? When I see like a cop or a SWAT guy, it's like, hey, he shoots really good. Yes, I agree. And he should. It's his job. But when I see some guy that's like, hey, I work at a dentist office and this is what I do, it's like, well, how the fuck are you like a national champion at shooting? Like, why did you get this good? I'm more interested in his process rather than the guy that had all the resources afforded to him and time to train and stuff like that. And you understand, like, even on the law enforcement side, you're gonna have to use your own time to get better, right? You know, most guys, if they're not, if you're on the LE side and you're not getting paid for it, you're not training. Like, I hate to say it, but I mean, is that not a factual statement from your guys' experience, or is that a factual statement?
For most cops, yeah.
Yeah, most cops,
overwhelming majority.
most cops are. I've had cops in classes tell me if they didn't have to carry a gun, they wouldn't. It's like, cool, I've got nothing for you then.
Yeah.
You were directed here by your department. They paid for you to be here. I'm still going to help you as much as I can, but just understand I'd be better off talking to my fucking trailer than I would be talking to you, because you have no interest in it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I hate to say it, but the percentages, the hit percentages, the, like, any metric you want to look to shows where the real skills and ability lie. And then people build businesses around mitigating this lack of training, lack of foundational skills in terms of the solution to their problem. You see it in law enforcement CQB. You see it in law enforcement vehicle procedures, because no one wants to do the fucking work, period. Like, that's just it. It's not even open for debate, right? You can find ways to get better, and all the information can be free if you have an internet connection. The problem is you have to do the work, and that's the disconnect. The work is not going to happen unless they're getting paid for it, unless someone comes into it. And then we all know organizationally, police organizations are not going to pay for appropriate training because they're more concerned about the legal aspect of, he went to the range, he did this, we're legally covered, boom, good.
Yeah. So Matt, you were, I don't know what your proper title was, but we're just going to call it the director of training for Chicago SWAT, right? How did you raise those dudes up? When you found, your new performance hunger, were you able to pull anybody up that was in your place where you were?
Yeah. And it's kind of, so it starts with selection, right? I mean, you got to pick the right guys. And then you've got to create a culture where the culture of the unit values excellence and values that hard work, like Matt was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you pick the right guys and you kind of make the culture of the team value excellence, it does happen. And we had some really good kids coming on, and they actually gave us 3 months for their train up once we selected them.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave us a 2-week selection. So we were able to pick some pretty good dudes. And man, all those guys were solid. They all dry fired, they all worked out, they all cared about it. When they went to the range, it was actually working on getting better, not just a bunch of grab ass. So there was a good crew.
Okay, cool. Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm misquoting something, right? So basically, you stood up the Air Marshal program with some help from some others, right?
Yeah, it was one of the first 7 guys.
Yeah, right. And that was a complete paradigm shift before you got in there from
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really cared about how air marshals shoot to it being, right, the upper echelon of LE shooters on an average basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get those guys to make that paradigm shift?
That we pushed the standards really hard. I mean, we pushed standards way up. The organization backed us up at that time, which was kind of cool. And they, what do you call it? The guys that I work with, there was a guy, Kim, it's a dude's name. He was an assaulter in C, but he and I were in the same division. He was a badge marshal and I was just a civilian guy, former unit guy. And both of us pushed them to be serious about it, to understand that the ramifications of them not being as advertised. And then we led by example. We could outshoot everybody in our office. I mean, I shot 2,500 rounds a week easily. I mean, I shot all the time, and everything we did, we pushed and pushed and pushed. So it was, a lot of it comes with leadership, but a couple of things, like back to what we're talking about, getting people to do it. What Matt said is exactly true. Is that all that stuff's out there. There's nothing, I mean, I've gone to classes. I know Matt hasn't gone to any classes, and that's his thing. My thing, every once in a while I'll go to a class just because I want to see what other people, like how they perform. And it's not right or wrong either way. But the bottom line is, Everything I need to know, truthfully, I know from my living room. It's just up to me. And the thing that I tell people all the time is one, okay, first thing, you're not that fucking good. You think you're good, but you're not that fucking good. Okay. As good as you think you are, not that good. Right. Two, okay, it's going to cost money if you want to be good. You're going to have to, you know, invest in yourself. You got to do it. I mean, I'm looking at cases of ammo, waiting for my freaking lungs to be normal again, and I'm going to be shooting every day. But it's not free. Ammo's not free, but you know, and I don't get provided ammo anymore, but it's going to cost money. And the third thing is put your freaking ego aside. And the goal is to be as advertised, to be the guy that can step up on the range and do things that are worth people coming to your courses for. I mean, it's like, or if you're an instructor, if you're not, be the guy that can step up on the range and shoot amongst your peers. And they go, wow, I can count on that guy. If shit goes sideways, I know that guy's good to go. And it's like a lot of people, they know the answers. Okay. And they want to do stuff, but want in one hand, shit in the other, rub them together. Like, sorry, man, there's a big thing called effort. And there's a lot of people that just don't want to do the work, and they want to justify and rationalize and all that. And back to what it said, my old first sergeant in the 3rd Recon said, you don't want to stand in front of somebody's widow and say, I'm sorry, your husband got flipped because I wasn't who I was supposed to be, because I told them I was somebody that I wasn't. And I used to put that on the marshals. Like, hey, dude, people are relying on you. I used to use a little story, and I got called on the carpet for it. We were shooting, we had an aircraft scenario, a live fire one. And guy came in and, you know, cranked up his 357 SIG, and it got away from him, and he shot one over his shoulder through another, you know, we had just paper targets, paper targets. And I stopped him. I go, there's two, one in the center chest, one like in the shoulder. I'm like, where's the third one? And it's like, oh, it's over there somewhere. I'm like, yeah, it's over there somewhere. See Mrs. Wilson over there? She was just coming back from visiting her daughter who has chemotherapy. But, you know, hey, you hooked her up, man. You took care of her because you were ballistically incompetent. You freaking killed somebody. Like, I used to shame people in public. Like, that's how serious you are. And I got called on the carpet for it. I didn't care. I'm like, fire me. I'm not going to sit here and preside over people that throw rounds and laugh about it. But that level of accountability, I've had people come up to me in scenarios and go, oh my God, we're fucking around. Like, if you want to write me up, I understand. But you build that. You build that through leadership. You tell them that this isn't acceptable. But institutionally, I see it. I know other people on this cast see it. I go to departments and it's all about good enough. Good enough. It's, oh, these guys are good enough. And good enough means you're not really good, but you'll live with it. You'll live with mediocrity. And God, man, if you want mediocrity, there's a fucking bucket of it waiting for you by tomorrow at noon for everybody. And it's like, that's why I don't even have time for it anymore, man. Like I said, I look at myself and go, hey, dude, you're not as good as you think you are. You need to get better. You're going to have to invest in that, and you've got to do the work. If you can do those three things, you can excel. But most people, most people don't even want to admit that they're not as good as they think they are. They sure as hell don't want to invest in it. They want to put money in their bass boat. Nothing against bass boats, big fan. But I'll tell you what, if you carry a gun and you don't want to get killed because you carry a gun professionally, then maybe you should freaking get a crowbar in your wallet and invest in your life and the life of your partner. It's like, that's why it was a leadership thing, man. It was a leadership. We drove those guys hard, but we set the example every day.
Wait, did Mike just try to not offend bass boats?
I tried.
That's the weirdest. That's the weirdest thing to not offend. I don't know. I mean,
it was like, a weird demographic to be afraid of backlash from. But he said a very.
I know, man. I don't want to get canceled. I don't want to get canceled by the bass freaking following.
It's a huge market. Man. It's a huge market.
Tell you what.
They originally talked about this with the first topic we kind of discussed. Like, so I think one thing that would be interesting to hear everyone say is, like, define then what's good enough from a skill standpoint.
Yep.
Right. And pick any skill, right? Like, you could pick any standard exercise. I don't really care what it is, but like, what would be deemed good enough to start layering training now to go into the tactical world? Like, let's take a bills drill, right? So let's say 5-yard bills drill for law enforcement. Like, at what point do you have to demonstrate proficiency with that one exercise? And I know this is a can thing, to where, okay, now we're going to put you can obviously draw the pistol and shoot aggressively and get hits where you make the bullets go where you want them to go. So now you're at that level to do a vehicle course. Like, what's good enough?
Yeah. AJ, since you didn't get the answer on the last one, why don't you start with that, bro?
So number one, probably way outside my lane. But to me, you got to look at the consistency of the shooter, consistency of the dude. What can he do continually? It's not as, I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, bro, you need a 2-second build drill, but maybe you need, you know, let's say a consistent 2.5 across 10 runs back to back any given day at any given time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you taught executive protection, right? And you taught the shooting package. What was good enough to get to whatever else they needed to do for you in concerns to shooting?
Well, part of the problem is I also don't teach there anymore because of difference in opinion on what was good enough and what wasn't good enough, you know? So for a lot of the stuff, we use the old Sephardic qual for when we moved people on. But honestly, the standards were too easy. You know, having someone be able to draw and present the gun and fire around on an 8-inch circle and at 7 yards in 2.5 seconds is not adequate, period, in my opinion.
Right. So just by, and like I asked a very pointed question. I think this highlights a huge problem. Like I think that, not to cut you off, Mike, but AJ, you do have a good frame of reference from this based off the volume of law enforcement guys you train. You see a huge cross section of active LE guys, right? And here's the problem within the tactical world. No one wants to say what's good enough.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you, like, I think I do not think a sub-second Bills drill at 7 yards is a difficult drill to shoot.
Sub
from
two?
Any holster
Okay.
configuration, open top, level 2, level 3,
because
concealment.
You said sub 1, and I was like, oh shit, challenge accepted.
Did I? No.
Yeah.
I was logging off.
Did I say sub 1?
You said sub 1. I like where your head's at.
I was going to dry fire. I was about to leave.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about,
start doing the math.
As a standard exercise, right? GM goal time for a Bills drill is draw the pistol and fire 6 alphas in under 2 seconds.
Yep.
Right. You look at it from a hit factor standpoint, passing that drill is hit factors greater than 15.
Mm-hmm.
So however you want to look at it, do you want to give some Charlies or do you want it to be clean and do it in alphas versus a part-time? But what I'm saying is, from the tactic, no one wants to define what's good enough.
Right.
Because with the kind of the benchmark players in this tactical world, right? The Instagram guys that have the followings, that have everyone's ear, there is a huge swath in skills and ability. It's great. So you can't, what are you going to say? Or am I going to say one thing and then I can't do that? Or, how does it look? Like nobody can come to an agreement on maybe cops need to be at that A-class level.
Yep.
Or is that a bridge too far?
Mike, you had an answer for that?
I just have one thing that I tossed around in class that I have. I look at like Matt's talking about a Bills drill. If you do that, what I look at, and it's a sticking point for me when I'm shooting Bills, trying to make my times, is always the first shot. But then I look at that relative to the application of a firearm for a law enforcement officer or a professional gun carrier. The first shot is going to be the critical shot. After that, whether you shoot 20 splits or 25 splits, whether you make it under 2 seconds or it's 225, you're already delivering kinetic energy in about a second. That's going to be the key to me. I think a Bills at 5 to 7 in 225 is more than adequate. I think actually, if you do it at 7 in 250, it's not world class or anything, but I think that should be good enough. But it's got to be all alphas and all that good stuff. But it shows that you can at least produce the gun rapidly and shoot rapidly and effectively at that distance. The goal obviously is to be under 2 seconds and all that. But I think you start getting the internals of it. What is the application of a Bills drill? Okay, you get out of a vehicle and you got to draw your gun and it's on. The key to that engagement is going to be the first effective shot. The first shot that's effective on target. The follow-up shots, like I said, whether it's a 20 or 25, you're already shooting somebody. Okay. But if you can't get that gun out and you can't get your first shot off until 156, you're screwed. So it's like, I think I look at it the same, I look at it a lot in common with Matt, and that there's got to be some way to have a standardized, this is good enough. And I think we have so much data in the shooting community from the sports shooting side, what speed and accuracy looks like, that as long as we make it something that is tiered and achievable, I don't think, I can almost guarantee you, we could get somebody in a day to be doing bill, almost anybody to be doing bills clean in under 250. I don't think that even be that hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we do it.
And that's,
I do it all the time. And they just don't know.
so do I. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not difficult. I mean, but I'm saying that becomes, that should become an easily achievable standard and a metric, like, hey, you're ready to go. If you can do this, you can produce a gun rapidly and effectively, you can move on to other tasks. But it's so broad, it's so broadly based. But that's why I look at bills personally as two different things. I look at it as the first shot, because that's going to drive everything. Okay. And then, the follow on the splits after that. As long as your first shot is under a second, you don't have to get on the gas super hard and you're still shooting good. But if your first shot is 121, you better be shooting some damn 13 splits or something. Otherwise you're not coming through. Right. And so I think that breaking down internally is going to be important. And I look at the focus for me, and when I'm instructing, that first shot is really critical. Okay. The repeatable first shot. So, I mean, so that's how I look at it. But yeah, I think that taking standardized drills where we've got a ton of data, and then taking those and going, okay, this is a reasonable metric for someone that is not a sport shooter by hobby, or it's just a gun nerd that's into it. I think that's going to be important, because I've seen a lot of people that won't even try because they're not even close to whatever the metric is. And I think that's a flaw on their part. But I also think that you give achievable goals that are tiered, they can get better. The marksmanship evaluation course I have has 3 levels, has level 3, level 2, and level 1. There's a big difference between level 3 and level 1. Okay, level 1 is 90-degree turn headshot at 10 yards in 1.5 or better from concealment. That's pretty spicy. I mean, it's not Eric Raffel, but you got to work at it. And if you want all 5 points, you got to shoot your freaking credit card. But there's a big difference between 1.5 and 3 seconds. 3 seconds is to get you invested, and then you can work towards those goals. But sometimes I think that in the shooting industry, we try to project our standards and beliefs onto people, and we've got to build them into it, because a lot of people that don't have the hard skills, the gun handling skills to make that happen yet. We should be pulling them along. We should give them a ladder to climb instead of saying, hey, jump up here or you're out.
Yep. Matt Little. So again, you were responsible for training for SWAT in Chicago. What was good enough for you?
So I think you got to look at it kind of a couple different ways. One is what's the subset of officer we're talking about, right? Are we talking about patrol officer? We're talking about somebody in a full-time team, somebody in a part-time team.
Well, just for you,
let's just
narrow it down. Full-time team.
Wait. I got to jump in here. No, you don't have to, because gunfights don't care who they're against.
No, gunfights
like
don't care. No, gunfights don't care.
It doesn't matter, right?
Gunfights don't care.
There's a physical standard for SWAT guys.
When you are starting to learn tactics, when are you going to start learning tactics, as opposed to how good do you think you need to be? That was the second part I was about to get to, right? Because obviously there's a certain skill level you should be at to start learning how to apply it. But then beyond that, how good should you actually want to be as far as like your sustainment training moving forward from that point? Because it's really 2 different questions. When are we going to start training them tactically? And when are we going to say that they are good enough to be able to perform?
Yeah. And that's where, so good enough to be able to perform is a standards-based thing, right? Of whoever you're working for, right? I think to be a cop out on the street carrying a gun, that standards is whatever the legal qual that you have to go through. For a SWAT team, though, right? What I have seen through my dealing with different guys that are on SWAT teams is that there's like a very hard and fast physical standard to make it onto a team, and then there is no fucking shooting standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because you now have to hold people accountable for something that instructors across the board in law enforcement cannot do.
I will say that on our team, there was actually a pretty high shooting standard, and you had to shoot it 4 times a year. And if you didn't make it, you got some retraining. And if you couldn't make it any longer, you weren't operational anymore. You couldn't do the work.
Right. But Matt, that's not really a standard. If it's retraining and passing it, it's not a standard.
Got it.
It's we're going to have something that we want you to do at, you're going to fall short, and then we retrain you to do it. Well, what did we do at the front side training you to get there? Right.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you there. I'm saying what the procedure was, but we still took guys off of operational status for it, and guys left the team because of it. So it was still a standard in the end. I'm not disagreeing with you about how it's implemented,
Yep.
but that was
Jim?
above my pay grade.
So Jim, you're responsible for a lot of the training in your department, right? And you had a question about that. So go ahead, man. What do you do?
It's a difficult question, right? Because it's difficult in that I have my individual thoughts and my individual skill set that I'm always striving for, and then the understanding of the realistics of an organization, right? And the fact that we got to go out and take calls. We have a very difficult call, and purposely. And I track our scores, not pass fail. I look at the numbers so that we can look at degradation and skill to ensure that we're supplementing the different components of our qual with constant and standardized training. And so like the standard that we have is, set by a number, but it is also set by our organizational culture. And looking at it from organization, team wise, I think they kind of go hand in hand, right? I think a 2.5 second bills drill, right, I think that's reasonable. With the caveat that you have an organizational culture that if there's a dude who is sub 2 second all the time, everybody's chasing him. That they're not chasing 2.5 seconds, is that they're chasing Assistant Commander Dexter, who is mostly a command post guy who's pushing all of your shits in, and you're the guys going through the door. Okay, you did that in 2.4. What Dexter do it in 1.97? Fuck, let me shoot that again. Yeah, bro, you best shoot that again and dry fire, because I'm gonna take your shit next time too, right? And so you've met that metric standard that we have to have, but that desire to continue it, is still there and is always there. And so I think, it's tough, right? Because I run organizations, I run an entire department's, training. I run a SWAT team's operations. And so, ideal world, 2 second bills drill is it, right? That's a standard, where you're done. But I think if you incorporate culture and that metric standard, then you set yourself up, for that best level of continuing success, right? Where it doesn't become about 2.5 seconds, it becomes about being the best that we can possibly be all the time, every single time, right? Where it's not, I'm trying to get 2.5, it's I'm trying to beat every motherfucker out here, right? And that's what I do in my quals. That's what I do in everything. Like, okay, great. I shoot a perfect qual on our department qual. Very difficult to do. Very few people in our department can do it, but can I do it faster than last time, right? And it's not, can I get 500? It's, can I get 500 and do it in half the time that I did before?
Yep.
And that's why it goes back to that institutional culture, right? You got to create the right culture on your team or in your unit that values that excellence, where kind of the entry level standard is like what Mike said, it's just your ticket, right? It's your ticket to get there. And then after that, there really isn't a baseline that's acceptable. You're always trying to increase the performance. And
that's the difference between chasing the number and chasing perfection, I think.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's you're chasing that perfection through a metric that has to have a number, of course, because how else are we, you know, finding value added and value lost? But I think as long as the end goal is that perfection through evaluation of a metric, I think to me, that's the most important thing.
And it kind of boils down to, what does your team value? Do they value the minimum standard for the qual, or do they value being the best they can possibly be? And everybody's always trying to raise the bar.
Yep. Cool.
I think we're in an echo chamber here. I think we're in an echo chamber.
Yeah, right now we are. So we're gonna
wait.
Go ahead. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Wait, hold on, because I hear everyone say this. The culture and raising the bar, but this is not the people that I shoot with. So where's the disconnect? Like, is this lip service? Like, oh, we're raising the bar or whatever, or because that's not what I'm seeing. So I'm a big believer in like, hey, guys show up. I'm a full-time SWAT guy from whatever department. Cool. And then I understand what you're saying, like raising the culture and raising the bar, but how much is that your opinion of what you think you're doing on the team, or what is actually happening on the team? Right? Because I even saw it from, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say, so like I see it vary, right? Like I see some teams out there that are really switched on. Like there's some guys out there that only get a couple training days a month, but they all work on their own and they care about it, and they're really pretty good. And then I see other guys, even on some full-time teams, that quite honestly don't have that. They don't have that culture, so they don't do that. They don't put in that work, and they're not as good. So it varies.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So guys, I try and keep this to an hour. We're well over that, right? So we're going to go right to the final segment of this, right? The get it off your chest segment, right? Let's be precise, but brief, right? So what do people need to stop doing to get better within the context of what we're talking about? What do people need to start doing to get better, right? So Mike, we'll start with you.
Stop watching bullshit one and done YouTube videos and mimicking them on the range, and just fucking dry fire. Actually dry fire, like have a scheduled time. Before I got the plague, I had one set up, but have a scheduled time every single freaking day that you dry fire. And this is exactly what I do. And this is how I dry fire. Mine's broken down into certain component skills, all that. But stop, and also stop selling the cow for magic beans. Stop trying to get the newest gun or get the newest, just freaking stop it. Just go practice. I mean, I've had my shit handed to me by some old guy with a Gen 1 Glock before. Why? Because the freaking dude could bang. He could shoot. So it's like, it's not the gun. The gun's not going to do it. It's not. It's amount of time that dude puts in his garage because he can't afford a shitload of bullets, and he shoots because I actually asked to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, so all the people like, stop the Instagram. I'm going to steal something from you, Matt, Pranka. It's ruining shooting a video at a time because everybody wants to do their shot, reload, shot video and stuff. I'm like, just stop looking at that crap and actually just dry fire. Spend that time freaking dry fire instead of looking at other people do stuff that's scripted and do their 187 bill drill with a 40 caliber. So they go, look, I did a 187 bill drill with a 40. Like, just that. Don't count other people's money, because at the end of the day, it's still their money. So make your own.
Yeah, the funny thing was I think you texted me one time. This is how much, the phones are listening, right? He's like, hey, bro, if I see one more person on Instagram do a one reload one to coming in hot, I'm going to kill somebody, right? I go, oh, that's funny. I didn't know what the hell you're talking about. Then for the next week, man, nothing but videos of one reload ones up in my shit. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here, right? AJ, what do people need? What do people need to do to get better? What do they stop need to do to get better?
They need to just fucking do it. Just stop procrastinating and just do it. You're never, everyone worries, well, I'm not ready to start dry firing. I'm not ready to start competing. I'm not ready to start doing this. I'm not ready to do this. Just go do it. Just start dry firing, start practicing. Because it's just one more day that you're not doing it. So that's it.
Yeah. To piggyback off of that, and you hear this all the time since you're out on the road with me a lot, man, especially when I do only when I do law enforcement classes, right? You always get that questions because, I have a niche with the red dot pistol, and people go like, well, that's great for the people that want to be here. What about the lowest common denominator? And my response is always like, are they here right now? I was like, no, then I don't care. That's not my job. That's not my job. You know what I mean? And I think that's a lot of it. You got to do it. You got to show up. You got to do it. Right. Jim?
I think people need to stop worrying about the perception that other people have of them, and be prepared to fail and to step up into an arena that makes you uncomfortable, and to appear at a lower or lesser level than what people probably think that you should have. And I'm talking specifically to cops. I think there's this idea that while you're the police, you should be good at that. And so people don't go out to get better at it because there's the public perception that they should be good at it. And they're like, oh, I'm not. So I don't want to go to this and have people see that I'm not. So then you're just going to live with that substandard skill set all the time. And it could cost you or somebody else their life, you know, or your job. And so go out there, get better, surround yourself with good people. It's 2022. The access to information, you know, is there. You know, I'm not one of those guys who's like, you know, you got to train every single day. You know, your family doesn't matter, your hobbies don't matter. You got to have all of that, but you got to find that balance. You got to be able to put yourself out there in order to get better. Elevate who's around you, and you'll elevate yourself.
Cool. Oh, damn. It's a t-shirt, bro. All right, Matt, Pranka.
No, man, I agree with everyone. It's about doing the work. Stop being concerned with buying skills through equipment or whatever. Find the information, you know, whoever's delivering it the way that you like to receive it, and start working.
Yeah. Mr. Little.
Everything everybody said is solid, but I would say just don't have an ego. You know, nobody's arrived. Just keep trying to get better.
I'm going to add to that, though. I'm going to add to my little thing to that, right? So, and this goes to Jim said, like, I know what you guys are saying. And me, if I fail or if I lose, whatever, as long as I'm learning stuff like that, right? But I would tell you what, man, my ego drives the shit out of me, right? Because I don't want to lose to any of you motherfuckers. I don't care who you are, right? If I see, you know, Mike doing a arms cross thing in less than 1 second or whatnot at 25 yards, or if I see Matt doing my standard in my flip-flops, the day I saw you do that, the next day I did my standards in flip-flops just to prove that I could do it too. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows that I don't give a shit about jailbait splits, but God damn it, how is Donovan so consistent at 14, 15 splits, right? Is that important to me? No. Do I want to know how to do it? Yeah, because I don't want any of you guys to be better than me, right? So I'm not disagreeing with you about the ego. I think it's the fear of failing that keeps people from doing shit. You got to get over that. But as far as ego goes, again, hey man, I don't give a I don't care who you are.
That's a drive to
Dude,
be better.
that's a whole different, like,
better.
when you're talking ego, you're talking about something that is so broad that we can't touch it here.
Right.
Because it's good to have an ego. It is good to have an ego. I'm just like everybody else out here. And I can remember stepping online with somebody like Rob Latham and going, yeah, that's Rob Latham. And every time I stepped to the line, when I was at Rio Salado or when I was at the unit or whatever, I wanted to beat him. Was I ever going to beat him? I did every once in a while. Every once in a while, I outed him on a stage. Every once in a while. Is that consistent? Is that no? But every time I step to the freaking line, I want to win. And that's a good ego. That is performance driven. Trying to drag somebody down is the negative side of an ego. I don't want to do the work, but I don't want to see you do it better than me. So I'll try and drag. That's the negative ego, or the unwillingness to go step in the ring and get your freaking teeth kicked in.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, that's the negative ego. That's a fragile ego. So when we start talking ego from the psychology side of it, we're kind of
that's a whole other thing. Now I get you.
Yeah.
I get you. But what's more important than everything else? Stage glory. That's what's more important than everything. Anyway, guys. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. Hey guys, everybody just go through, where can we find you as far as your classes go? What are you doing and whatnot? Mike, since we got you on there, go ahead. Tell them about your company. Where can people find you, man? When can they train with you?
Okay, CTT Solutions, people kind of know where I am. I just opened up a subsidiary on the West Coast. I have a whole nother business, and California-based business, so I'm pushing into the post realm, because you gotta have a California-based business to be a presenter for post. So I've got one course that's already approved. I've got 3 more that are in the hopper for that. So my push is really hard on the West Coast LE side. I've got courses that are being submitted for TCLO in Texas. I've got courses that have already been approved for post in Idaho. So my big push is there. I'm looking at running some regional classes, just open enrollment, concealment stuff in the new year. I've been waiting for the LE side to gel, and it's been pretty crazy right now. So yeah, just I'll post it whenever I have a civilian class. I'll probably do between 2 and 4 in California, and then I'm looking at Florida. I'm looking at Virginia, Georgia, just trying to get just added requests. People like, will you come out here and do this? So just keep track. I'll be posting that. I know the business is very regional, so I'm more towards the West Coast, but I'll be on the Continental Divide in Denver, and then I'll be back east for a couple times this year. So just keep track of it.
Cool. AJ.
Yep. You can find me at practicalperformance.org, new website. It's awesome. Go check it out. As far as classes go, we just launched the 1911 Craftsman class. So check that out. The first one is going to be in Iowa. I think it's June. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but enrollment's open. Or jump into our How to Practice class. Or if you happen to be at a Modern Samurai Project class, chances are I'll be there as well.
Yep.
So those are going to be the easiest ways to find me.
Awesome. Jim?
Tactically Sound, go to tacticallysound.org, Tactically Sound on Facebook, on the gram, adding some more open enrollment stuff. Our shift schedules don't come out until kind of the beginning of the year. So my calendar always takes a little while to roll out at the beginning of the year, but adding stuff, host stuff. I'll be at a couple conferences across the country and wherever Walter sends me this year.
Hell yeah. Mr. Pranka?
You can xrayalpha.com, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on there. I hate that shit, but classes are up there. They're added and subtracted. I have a real job, so
yeah. When hey,
train when it's interesting to me.
When your Instagram icon on your phone starts pulsing, it's usually Matt starting shit. So it's awesome. You're actually doing an open enrollment class, aren't you? Did I see that? Oh,
I am.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So see how that one goes. First one.
Nice, buddy. Nice. And Mr. Little.
Graybeard Actual, Instagram, Facebook, graybeardactual.com. Got classes scheduled all the way out through the first half of next year.
Cool.
So check it out.
Cool. Outstanding. Guys, hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for contributing. I think people got some good ideas of how to get to that next level out here, right? As far as me, guys, you know me, modernsamuraiproject.com, AIWB classes, red dot pistol classes, another 100 classes this year starting on February 5th. If I'm not coming near you, it's because you're not looking hard enough. Would love to train with you. That being said, guys, thanks for sticking around. If you like all this free milk being given to you, like to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, put some comments down there. I probably won't read them. And more importantly than anything else, be good, stay safe, get more training.